Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force.
The Force?
And the Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
There was a very important anthropologist. He's the one with whom my works begin, you might say. He was a world traveler and recognized very soon that there were certain motifs that appeared in all of the religions and all the mythologies of the world. Such an idea, for example, as a spiritual power.
The film is breaking attendance records all over the country. Not since Jaws have so many people stood in line to see a movie. It's just an old-fashioned cowboy movie set in space with mind-boggling special effects. Star Wars cost $9 million to produce. It will bring in at least 10 times that amount. As a result, the price of 20th Century Fox stock has doubled in the last 2 weeks.
Following the success of Star Wars, George Lucas decided to step down from the director's seat. He'd experienced health problems associated with stress from shooting the first movie, and went on the hunt for someone to fill his shoes for the sequel. He turned to Irvin Kershner, a professor he'd had at the University of Southern California.
Kershner was a director, and he taught at USC, where I went to school. He had directed some movies and a lot of television, and I thought was a very talented director. His name came up pretty early on as somebody who was, I feel, a very major talent that had been overlooked by the film industry. He's very thoughtful and intellectual, and I think was able to understand the line between the fact that this is kind of an entertainment movie, but there's a giant subtext going on.
It's not a science fiction movie.
Lucas, who was still creating the basic story for the films, knew more would have to be revealed about the Force, which audiences were hungry to know about. There was something about the Force that was familiar to them, something they intrinsically understood in their gut. Yet without explicit exposition, they would be stuck with the few clues received from Obi-Wan in the first film. Joseph Campbell, author of The Hero with a Thousand Faces, the book that arguably saved the first film during its writing process, recognized immediately that there were explicit parallels to the Jedi's beliefs in Eastern cultures.
Well, he had him exercising with that strange weapon and then pulled the mask over. That's real Japanese stuff.
You know, I did feel something. I could almost see the remote.
That's good. You've taken your first step into a larger world.
Luke's first adventure, A New Hope, was structured perfectly to match Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. But with plans for a trilogy, the scope of the story had changed, and Luke's first adventure revealed itself as a smaller cycle within a larger hero's journey. While we watched Luke grow out of his naivety and into the harsh realities of adulthood in his first adventure, it becomes clear from the beginning of the second that he still has much to learn.
Steady. Hey, steady, girl. Hey, what's the matter? You smell something?
From the beginning of this film, the symbols that Luke finds himself surrounded by are ones of consumption, digestion. In fact, according to my count, throughout the runtime of Empire Strikes Back, scenarios involving digestion appear 9 times, and the motif of closing jaws appears 11 times.
Wham! That represents danger to me. When you have the teeth and a door coming down.
In this film, Luke is always either being swallowed or cutting open the belly, symbolically preparing to crawl inside and be reborn. The visual language of the film tells us this story is focused primarily on the belly of the beast stage of the hero's journey, where the hero confronts the deepest aspects of their psyche and undergoes a profound transformation. It is after escaping from the cave of the Wampa that Luke receives his call to adventure.
Luke? Luke?
Ben?
You will go to the Dagobah system.
Dagobah system.
There you will learn from Yoda, the Jedi Master who instructed me.
Ben?
Humbled by his mistakes, Luke prepares to cross the threshold into unknown territory once again. In my last video in this series, I explained how Han and Leia represented polar aspects of Luke's subconscious, like the Catholic symbols of the angel and devil on the hero's shoulders. In this second stage of Luke's journey, the bonds are so secure that words are no longer needed. They are already in sync.
Be careful.
You too.
Without being in conflict with the shadow self, Luke will spend much of his journey seeking somewhere to direct his frustrations, a replacement shadow to once again engage with and learn from. The first, though very temporary, reminds him much of himself as he was not that long ago.
Right now I feel like I take on the whole Empire myself.
I know what you mean.
Yet the dragon that Luke escaped in his first adventure has grown stronger. After narrowly escaping from the dragon, Luke crosses the threshold from his familiar world of conflict with the Empire into the fantastic world of this new adventure into even deeper regions of his psyche. As Luke heads to other parts of the galaxy, Han and Leia's adventures begin to parallel his own. When Luke descends into the swamps of Dagobah, they too symbolically descend into the belly of the beast with him.
I'm not picking up any cities or technology. Massive life form readings, though. There's something a lot down there.
Luke crashes on a planet whose entire surface seems to be one vast swamp. The water envelops his starship.
In reading these things psychologically, water is the unconscious. The creature in the water would be the dynamism of the unconscious, which is dangerous and powerful and has to be controlled by consciousness.
There's an awful lot of moisture in here.
It's like something out of a dream. Still, something familiar about this place.
The snakes and lizards that infest this place tell us that Luke is in a realm ruled by the reptile brain, the primal part of us that is always eating, digesting, consuming, or trying not to be consumed. It is in this place of primal fear that Luke meets his second mentor figure.
Feel like what? Like we're being watched.
Oh, wait, put your weapon. I mean you no harm. I am wondering, why are you here?
When Yoda appears out of the fog like some apparition from Luke's mind, he seems just another swamp creature, concerned only with consumption.
Hey! It's my dinner!
How you get so big eating food of this kind?
But Luke's training in the Force has begun, whether he knows it or not. Before we move on to Yoda's teachings, let's break down what we learned about the Force from A New Hope. Obi-Wan taught us of something that is felt first within.
Remember, a Jedi can feel the Force flowing through him.
You mean it controls your actions?
Partially, but it also obeys your commands.
Although the Force has its greatest parallel with the Chinese concept of Qi, the energy that moves through and animates all things, this use of the word flow is revealing. The psychological concept of flow was made popular in 1975, around the time that George Lucas was writing early scripts for Star Wars, through the works of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who published Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. In this book, he described the flow state as a psychological state of mind in which one is so focused on the task in front of them that all other concerns and distractions vanish. It is equated to the dancer achieving their best performance, the rock climber accomplishing the perfect ascent, or the artist engrossed so fully in their work that they forget to eat. It is the state of mind in perfect meditation, calmed by an activity to which it can give its complete focus. This concept of flow actually predates Mihai, going as far back as the 4th century BCE to one of China's principal spiritual works, the Tao Te Ching, written by a maybe historical, maybe mythological figure known as Lao Tzu, which translates roughly to old man or old master. In this and other classical Chinese works, Taoist sages, known as immortals, are described accomplishing incredible feats like curing people of illness, remaining unharmed by burning or freezing, walking peacefully with, or even riding, wild animals, and even flying amongst the clouds, all by following the Tao, the One, which is natural, spontaneous, eternal, nameless, and indescribable. It is at once the beginning of all things and the way in which all things pursue their course.
Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the force around you. Here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Yes, even between the land and the ship.
These sages channeled the energy of the Tao through what they referred to as Wu Wei, a course of effortless action, sometimes referred to simply as non-action, where perfection is achieved not by trying to control one's actions, but by letting go control and aligning with the natural energies that move the universe.
I'm one with the Force, the Force is with me. I'm one with the Force, and the Force is with me.
In A New Hope, Luke's journey is all about learning to relinquish control, find this experience of peak flow, and use it to his advantage. The trench run at the end of A New Hope is symbolic of this experience, when one's goal becomes so clear that all other considerations vanish, rushing away like the walls of the Death Star. When we are in this state, achieving our goal begins to feel almost inevitable. All we had to do was set ourselves aside, and let the universe naturally take its course. Even in the prequel trilogy, the Jedi often revert to this process of problem-solving by non-action. Instead of forcing their way through a problem, they will often wait for the solution to present itself.
All right, I'm sure another solution will present itself. Don't worry, the Force will guide us.
Qui-Gon's name is even a Western simplification of Qi-Gong, the martial arts practice involving the movement of Qi through the body, and Jinn, which is a spirit in Islamic tradition that makes itself known to someone through secretive or hidden means, aligning with Qui-Gon's role in the films as the first Jedi to learn how to return as a spirit after death.
An old friend has learned the path to immortality. One who has returned from the netherworld of the Force, your old master.
Qui-Gon?
How to commune with him, I will teach you.
Lucas himself has spoken out about the purpose of the Force in Star Wars.
When I make the films, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm teaching on a much larger scale. I put the Force into the movies in order to try to awaken a certain kind of spirituality. I see Star Wars as taking all of the issues that religion represents and trying to distill them down into a more modern and more easily accessible construct that people can grab onto to accept the fact that there is a greater mystery out there.
Anakin, if one is to understand the great mystery, one must study all its aspects, not just the dogmatic, narrow view of the Jedi. If you wish to become a complete and wise leader, you must embrace a larger view of the Force.
The great mystery here refers to the central questions of existence. What is consciousness? Where does it come from? What did we experience before birth? And what will we experience after death? The same questions that every world religion has tried to answer over the centuries.
It's the edge, the interface between what can be known and what is never to be discovered, because it is a mystery transcendent of all human research. The source of life. What is it? No one knows.
As Lucas has said elsewhere, I began to distill the essence of all religions into what I thought was a basic idea common to all religions and common to primitive thinking. I wanted to develop something that was non-denominational but still had a kind of religious quality.
I didn't want to invent a religion. I wanted to try to explain in a different way the religions that have already existed.
Who was his father?
There was no father. I carried him, I gave birth, I raised him. I can't explain what happened.
I've tried to take the ideas that seem to cut across the most cultures.
How far away is Yoda? Will it take us long to get there?
Now, Yoda, for me, was a Zen master. And the things he says, war does not make one great, and things like that, are sort of little bits of Zen.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
Yoda, whose name is likely based on Hebrew's Yodea, meaning wise one, was visually modeled after the Buddha. Many of the visual symbols employed across the Star Wars films are actually drawn directly from Buddhism. The first teaching of Buddhism is the Four Noble Truths. These are: all life is suffering. Suffering comes from clinging attachment. Suffering can end by eliminating attachment.
Attachment is forbidden. Possession is forbidden. Compassion, which I would define as unconditional love, is central to a Jedi's life.
The last noble truth is: attachment can be eliminated through the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path, or more simply, the Middle Path, is a series of instructions on proper conduct and moderation that Buddhists have studied for centuries, aimed at bringing about the cessation of suffering. One of the steps on the Middle Path is proper mindfulness.
Be mindful of your feelings. Be mindful of your thoughts, Anakin.
Be mindful of the living force.
Another is proper concentration.
Keep your concentration here and now where it belongs.
One of Buddhism's simplest and yet most profound teachings is this: all actions and events happen first in the mind, as thoughts or impulses, before making their way into the physical world. Thoughts become reality. From the smallest impulses to the greatest ambitions, all are born first in the mind. This has been simplified over time into our modern expression, mind over matter, but is put in Star Wars another way.
Always remember, your focus determines your reality.
This manifesting of mental energies is true not just of ambition, but also of its shadow, fear.
Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
An experience of suffering leads to fear of more suffering. Fear of suffering leads to feelings of vulnerability. Feelings of vulnerability lead to defensive anger. Defensive anger becomes real hate, which perpetuates suffering. The instincts that cause us to lash out at the external world, to attack, to shoot our enemy before their weapon can be drawn, are symptoms of insecurities in us that must be dealt with if the pain is to abate. Pain ceases only when we find stillness in our own minds.
But beware of the dark side. Anger, fear, aggression. The dark side of the Force are they. Easily they flow, quick to join you in a fight. If once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. Consume you it will.
Is the dark side stronger?
No. Quicker, easier, more seductive.
But how am I to know the good side from the bad?
You will know when you are calm, at peace, passive. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack.
By this point in Empire, Yoda has not just been instructing Luke on the peaceful nature of the Force, not just tailoring his lessons to the needs of the young, impatient pupil in front of him, but also leading Luke on a descent towards his innermost cave.
There's something not right here. I feel cold.
Yoda has brought him to a naturally occurring confluence of Force energy that will lead him deep inside of himself.
Then you must go.
What's in there?
Only what you take with you.
There's a seriousness to Yoda's face here because he knows what's going to happen. Because actually, he's setting it all up what's going to happen in the cave.
Your weapons. You will not need them.
Because Luke is going to have to face himself, his fears. And when he tells him you don't need the guns, you don't need all that stuff, he's still a weak man. He still needs guns and sabers. That shows that he's still weak. Anybody needs a gun is weak.
Although not all audiences understood the meaning of the confrontation with Vader when the film was released, we can see today that it has parallels to one of the earlier mentioned teachings of Buddhism.
The Force is within you, and at the same time, you create your own bad vibes. So if you think badly about things, or you act badly, or you bring fear into a situation, you're going to have to defend yourself, or you're going to have to suffer the consequences of that. In this particular case, he takes his sword and with him, which means he's going to have combat. If he didn't, he wouldn't. But he has the capacity to become Darth Vader simply by using the hate and fear and using weapons as opposed to using compassion and caring and kindness.
Luke has a new symbol to project his shadow onto.
And he looks into the helmet, and it's his own face, which means that he's facing himself. He is his own enemy.
Luke realizes that his flexible nature as a human means that he too can change and take on many forms, and that the real shadow is this very flexibility, the very risk inherent in humankind's capacity for such change. The shadow is not something that Luke will ever be free of. It is a battle he must fight every day of his life.
No. We'll never get it out now.
Always with you what cannot be done. Do you nothing that I say?
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No. No different. Only different in your mind.
I don't believe it.
That is why you fail.
Although Luke's mentors do not think he is ready, Luke feels he has gained the knowledge he came to Dagobah for. His mind is made up, and his reality reflects it.
If you end your training now, if you choose the quick and easy path, as Vader did, you will become an agent of evil.
Luke departs from Dagobah without completing his training on the dark side of his nature. With his development arrested, Luke's old shadow finds himself ambushed by the new.
We would be honored if you would join us.
And frozen solid, reflecting the failed state of Luke's self-improvement. Luke heads into Cloud City, pressing forward aggressively, much like Han might have. But, unknowingly, he is only completing another descent, one that will lead him face to face with his new shadow in the flesh. Luke's confrontation with Vader leads him to a room with a window arranged in a very simple mandala. This motif, used throughout Star Wars, is actually borrowed from Eastern practices as well.
This was actually a Hindu term for a sacred circle, indicating the forces of the spiritual powers that operate in our lives.
The mandala represents the mind and the forces at play within it. When the mandala shatters, it reveals an even more complex one beneath. The descent continues.
Don't make me destroy you.
Here, Luke has been cut off. There is no possibility of escape.
I am your father.
Only one thing comes to mind. Only one lesson taught to him by both of his mentors.
Use the Force, Luke. Let go.
Luke descends into the mandala and comes finally to the abyss. In spite of his success in this and other situations, years later we learn that Luke has never stopped staring into that abyss. When a new visitor arrives, calling him away from his isolation and back to adventure, Luke refuses. His submerged X-Wing fighter tells us not just of his physical isolation on this water planet, but also of his complete descent back into himself.
Go away.
But this new visitor is not just any. Exceptionally attuned to the Force, Rey is called to the sacred Jedi texts, the scripture of the Jedi religion, resting at the center of an organic mandala composed of unhewn wood.
Who are you?
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I'm afraid. I don't know what it is, or what to do with it. And I need help.
You need a teacher. The Force is not a power you have.
It's not about lifting rocks. It's the energy between all things, a tension, a balance that binds the universe together.
Okay. But what is it?
Close your eyes. Breathe. Now, reach out.
When I was 10 years old, I asked my mother, I said, well, there's only one God, why are there so many religions? I've been pondering that question ever since, and it would seem to me that the conclusion I've come to is that all the religions are true.
What do you see?
They just see a different part of the elephant.
The island. Life. Death and decay that feeds new life. Warmth. Cold. Peace. Violence.
And between it all,
Balance. And energy. A force.
and inside you.
Inside me. That same force.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. I know this video was a long time coming, but I'm so excited to finally have it out into the world for people to see. These topics are really important to me, and I love sharing my growing understanding of the meaning behind the stories we all share. If you're new here, hitting that subscribe button below the video actually greatly helps out the channel, and hitting the bell icon next to that will ensure that you never miss when I upload a new video. If you like, and if you're able, I have a Patreon page where you can support off-screen for as low as $1 per video. It's a pretty cool way to help me make videos more regularly, and you also get to join our supportive Discord community, where like-minded people discuss the latest releases, world events, and support each other's mental health. You also get your name at the end of each video you support, and early access to videos a day early. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for following me on this journey. There's a lot more to come in the future. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you in the next video.